They use this gun then to coerce some of the less enthusiastic officers. And ultimately, at about 5 o'clock in the morning, Christian kicks Bligh's ass out of bed for a change. Keep in mind that coconut incident had just happened like the day before, and he's got a cutlass and a gun, and he's like, "Wake up, slut. This here is a mutiny."
History, I'd like to follow me down the rabbit hole. History, I'd like to, frankly, I want to know.
Hi, welcome to HILF, History I'd Like to Fuck with Dawn Brody. I'm Dawn Brody, and it's so cozy here in the den. That's the Deluxe Edition Network. To find more great podcasts in the den, click the link in our show notes or go to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. Now, I hope you've stretched, okay, because you are in for it. This is an epic adventure tale from the high seas, a story of violence and lust and honor and greed that spans thousands of miles and centuries of time. It's the Mutiny on the Bounty. Oh, did you feel that? Now, I am joined by Scott Edwin Williams, an Australian school teacher and author of the incredible book series, Lightbulb Moments in Human History. He is brilliant. He has an infectious laugh, and like me, he seeks out those moments from history that make you giggle and gasp, but also give you hope. So climb aboard Bounty with us and meet infamous Captain Bligh, the crew of sexy-ass mutineers, and the tattooed kick-ass bunch of Tahitian mamas who saved the fucking day. Oh, I've saved you a coconut. Let's get started. We have, you and I, been through it just trying to find this time to record remotely because we are on the other sides of the world. There's oceans and time zones. It's fucked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like for me, it's 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right. And it is 1 o'clock in the afternoon for me, but it's also, if I'm not mistaken, for you, it is Friday the 12th, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Wow. You know what that means, Scott? It means that when you and I are speaking, I am literally history.
Oh, yes, you are.
I'm like...
Yes, I'm in the future. I am your future.
My future is gorgeous. Well, I'm a fan of you, Scott Edwin Williams. As usually happens, I end up diving in, especially when my guests are strangers to me. I do find that in the course of my research and preparation for the episode, I end up diving into your HILF, girl, like as much as I do the subject at hand. And you're a glorious annals to explore. You are a historian yourself, a history nerd. You don't like people calling you a historian. You prefer history nerd.
Yeah, I feel like I don't quite rate historian, but hey, it's just a personal preference.
You identify better as nerd, I understand.
Yeah.
But you have written, you are published, you are the author of Lightbulb Moments in Human History. Part 1, Cave to Colosseum, came out last year, and Part 2, Peasants to Periwigs, comes out in April of this year. You have multiple books published, girl. That's historian stuff.
Yeah. And then I also just recently published the audiobook of the first book. So that was fun.
That's cool. Who's your reader?
A guy called Joel Hines. I needed to get an Australian guy because in parts of it I say, as an Australian, blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't have a British person or an American saying that. So I just had to get some Australian guy. He was really good.
That's awesome. You speak as yourself. It's a first-person perspective, what you think about these events, how you relate these events to kind of your own life and your own interest in history. And it's funny and it's lighthearted. It's great.
Well, to me, I wanted to try to, and in a very similar way to what you do with HILF, is to try to make history, as interesting as possible, to try to see the humour in it and to try to make people interested because of that. Because I see it. I love it. I'm not like you. I'm totally in love with it, but not everyone is, and I think it's hard to make people fall in love with it if they just can't see the humour and all the other stuff in there that people don't teach you in school usually.
Right. I'm with you, man. It's like I'm in love with it too. I want to think and talk about history all the time. And most people are so turned off by it, or they think they're turned off by it. I feel like it's like people who, just their favorite food is pickled herring. You know what I mean? And you're just like, oh no. And I don't have to make anyone else eat it, but like, how do I move through the world with this seemingly repugnant thing just like on me and about me, oozing out of me? I can, if I tell him, trust me, you take a little bit, you put it on a Ritz cracker, you may never go back. And one of the things I love too about your perspective on history and the way your book unfolds is that it's really optimistic. And I've watched some of your interviews too, and you maintain that optimism throughout. One of the little blurbs that describes your book, I think, so well, says that it entertains, yes, and provides hope that while times are tough, we're not all going to hell in a handbasket. So what about your study of history has given you this hope for the future?
Okay, well, I think we tend to lose sight of the fact that we have all these amazing things that people have never had before, like technologies and all the things that human ingenuity has brought, but also literally health. It wasn't until like the 1940s that they introduced penicillin, and until that point, human lifespans were like 60 maybe in developed countries, 65 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
In undeveloped countries, it was far worse. And it wasn't until like the last, sort of 20 or 30 years, it's really jumped up a lot. And I think we just take that stuff for granted. We just go, oh, well, everything's shit. And we lose track of the fact that, like, we have stuff available to us that would have been, like, and stuff available to us that would have been amazing to the caveman, that to us is just like normal everyday crap.
Right.
Who cares if I can have a coffee right now and get an espresso machine to make something? Like, to make coffee 50 years ago, you'd have had to have ground some beans and done all that stuff, and maybe people would love that, some artisanal people, but I don't want to have to do that every time I make a coffee.
It's a great perspective. You bring this regular reminder of how really incredible humanity is. And that there is a pendulum swing to this, that indeed when one points out how fucking rotten we are.
And we are. I'm not saying for a moment we're not.
And we are. And let's not forget, dude, that we are rotten. There's terrible stuff. But that it swings both ways.
Yeah.
And that you just, it's the beating heart of all of our great literature. Knows that for every Voldemort there's a Harry Potter. Oh, yeah. Knows that for every Archangel we know that we live between the swings of these things. So get on.
Once upon a time there was a historical perspective that the world was just always on and up, always going up. There was just always upwards. There was never any sort of downward slides. And I think, because we are going through somewhat of a downward slide at the moment, I think it's easy to think that, it's going to continue. We're going to keep on declining, the civilization's over, all that kind of stuff. When in fact, this has happened all along. And I describe it as history's like the stock market.
Yeah.
Like there are corrections, there are declines, but there's a general long-term uptick. And if you look at it over the long period, it's always going up. Yeah, there are sometimes there are down, like right now, there are lots of crappy things happening in the world. And there's always natural disasters and stuff, but I don't take those into consideration in this. That's just act of God.
Sure.
But as far as human endeavour, there's always, ups and downs, but generally going upwards.
I agree. And this does bring us, I know you've listened to some HILF episodes. You know how we
I've listened to them all now. Yes. Last time we were talking about this on in our emails. I hadn't listened to them all. I've listened to them, every single one of them. And I'm a fan too, Dawn. I'm definitely a fan. I don't feel worthy.
Oh, come on. I am humbled by your fandom. It's like you, Scott, and my mom. You and Lana. You listen to everyone. It fills my heart. Well, you know then that this is the part where I ask you why you delivered unto us this incredible HILF of Mutiny on Bounty. What brought us here?
Okay. Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, obviously, I'm an Australian, and even though that there's not an immediate Australian connection to Mutiny on the Bounty, it's taking place at a time when Australia's being settled, and it's not very far away from Australia being settled. But then later on, there's another connection with Bligh, because he later becomes the governor of New South Wales, which is the convict colony. Where I had an ancestor who was brought out on the first lot of ships that came out. So a chicken thief was...
What a distinguished line, yes.
I have a connection to that whole period. It's something that I really enjoy. But also, it's just one of those stories. And the more you look into it, like you just initially think, oh, it's just a mutiny on a boat, no big deal. But the more you read about it or hear about it, you go, oh my God.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's sexy ass.
Girl, this history walks into the bar, just tits first. The jukebox stops. This HILF, man. And, I have a lot of Australian listeners, which makes me so happy. I know in large part because I'm a friend of Jim Jeffries' podcast, I Don't Know About That, which is such a joy, and they're so nice. And so I have inherited some Australian listeners who I adore. And some of the folks shortly after they started listening to HILF had sent me the Mutiny on the Bounty. And I'm like you, man. I know Marlon Brando was in one of the movies. I know Mel Gibson was in one of the movies. I know what a mutiny is. I'm a boat nerd. I'm a pirate nerd. You know what I mean? So I know I know that.
Yes, I know that.
And I know that mutinies are fascinating, and so of course I'm interested in that. Wow, did I have fun? I went into this a bit of a virgin. And I'm feel like a professional streetwalker now after all of our stuff. This book was my primary source. It is called The Truth About the Mutiny on HMAV Bounty and the Fate of Fletcher Christian. And it's written by a guy named Glynn Christian, who is in fact a descendant of Fletcher Christian, the lead mutineer. And it is a page turner. I had the joy of reading this over Christmas. So bless my relatives. They got to leave. I'm such a nerd. Jump up from the recliner. People are just sitting next to a crackling fire watching Elf, for the 10th time. And I just leap out of my father-in-law's recliner and be like, you guys, did you know that they had 9 Tahitian women? And they went, and everyone's like, shut up. And I, sit down. It was a wild ride. There are some incredible resources, of course, on the internet that have detailed genealogy that will trace pretty much every passenger, every crew member, everyone they encountered, where they ended up, and you can do the conspiracy theory wall with your yarn and your thumbtacks and just have it out. It's a lot of fun. And what a delightful resource was the Pitcairn Islands Center. So, spoiler alert, one of the islands that we're going to talk a lot about, because the key mutineers end up on this amazing isolated island in Indonesia. Their descendants live there still. And it is a totally autonomous and independent place. And they have made a lot of very cool cultural decisions that are unique to that island. And bless their hearts, they got a love of history, and they got a little history center there, and it has an amazing online presence. And I milked it.
Oh, cool.
Milked it big time. So here is my plan going forward for our HILFing of the Mutiny on the Bounty. So it turns out, as I said, this is sort of an ever-blooming rose of stories. And the adventure tale of the Mutiny on the Bounty is actually like 5 whole independent adventure tales. There is the story of the mutiny itself, which is nuts, right? The first lieutenant of the Bounty, Fletcher Christian, who mutinies against Captain Bligh and then sets Captain Bligh off on the open sea in a boat with like 18 other guys. That's nuts. Just that story. Crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Then there's the story of Captain Bligh and those 18 fucking guys on the open sea who end up surviving and going thousands of miles with no instruments across the open ocean to tell the tale. Crazy. Then there's the story of the mutineers who, after they leave Bounty, make lives in Tahiti only to be caught by cunty Captain Edward Edwards.
Oh, yeah.
And then they're shipwrecked on their way back to London to face justice. This is nuts. That's crazy. And then there's the panty dropper, Scott, story of our hero, Fletcher Christian, right? Played by Marlon Brando and Mel Gibson for a reason, right?
And Clark Gable in the early one.
John Dillinger, my God. Who, along, right, with these indigenous men and women, attempt to build a utopian society on a deserted island and actually do it for like a minute. It's nuts, right? And then let's not forget, dude, the indigenous women who basically jump off a cliff into an unknown world with these white mutineers and have their whole history completely changed and introduce new things to the world. I mean, my God, the fuck. It's hot fuck.
Oh, yeah, it's full on.
So here's what we're going to do moving forward. I'm going to get us aboard the Bounty. All right, right before and during the mutiny, we're going to get to know these guys. We're going to find out the stakes. We're going to kind of get our sea legs, right? Then we're going to get to the part where Bligh gets pushed out on that open boat with those 18 guys. And when Fletcher Christian has taken command of Bounty, in reality, you, Scott Edwin Williams, are steering this ship, okay? It's not exactly a choose your own adventure, but it's going to be a choose the next adventure. You will point our sails.
Excellent.
Okay.
I'm prepared to navigate us through this these stormy seas.
Oh, I knew you would be. I want to start, of course, with a story. So we are aboard the Bounty. We have been at sea on the Bounty for over a year. Well, that is 10 months. Getting to Tahiti is a lot of details you're going to hear unfold later. The bottom line is we are exhausted. Captain Bligh is a cunt. Okay?
Oh, yes.
And our guy, First Lieutenant Fletcher Christian, is asleep in his hammock, finally below decks after getting a break. And he is kicked awake. Knocked with a stick. Get your shit up, right? The captain wants to see you above decks. Fuck. He's tired. He just fucking laid down. This is no fun. Nothing about this has been fun. And he kind of gets above decks, and William Bligh, his captain, puts a finger in his face and says, "Damn your blood. You've stolen my coconuts." And Fletcher Christian is like, "What the fuck? What?" And he's just mad as fuck. Where the fuck are his coconuts? Who took his coconuts? The captain is on a tear, all right? And Fletcher Christian is not exactly a low-level sailor. He's second in command. He's the first lieutenant, and he doesn't get treated like this exactly, right?
And he's a gentleman.
Right.
Whereas Bligh is sort of from a bit lower born. So, in fact, from the point of view of class, Fletcher Christian is actually a sort of classier dude than Bligh.
Yeah, and is used to a certain, not just a certain way of treatment, but like a certain level of respect, right? And yeah, this kind of inversion, and it's been getting to him for a while. And also, he is like, yeah, I did. How about that? I was thirsty, and so I helped myself to a coconut, which is perfectly within his rights, right? These coconuts are cheap as fuck. Anybody on board can get 20 of them from an indigenous islander by giving them a nail. right? These things are, everyone's kind of got their own coconuts laying around. You can just get them, right? But he's like, yeah, I'm thirsty. I ate a coconut. And also, guess what? As the second in command, I can drink your booze. I, right now, have the right to go up there to your private liquor supply and help myself to your booze. So why would I think, even if this is your fucking coconut, man, why would I think I couldn't help myself to this coconut, right? And Bligh is fucking livid. I knew it. I fucking knew somebody took my coconut. And he cuts the officers and the crew. He cuts their rum rations, their supply of yams. My God, not the yams,
Not the yams. Oh.
But everyone's already hungry and thirsty, so it sucks, right? But he doesn't stop there. William Bligh then says to these officers, only half of you are probably going to make it back to London because I'm either going to throw you overboard when we get into the Straits or I'm going to leave you in Jamaica. And not the officers were like, the fuck, man? And the regular shipmen were like, Jesus Christ, if he said that to those guys, we don't stand a chance, right? Yeah. All of this coconut incident story, because it is only within hours of this coconut incident that the mutiny that dominates our story officially begins. What was the instigating thing? What sets our crew off together on the ocean? And it is drum roll, right?
Yep.
Breadfruit.
Yep.
This whole thing happens from bread because King George III, right? He'll be back.
Yes.
Has just lost the American colonies, and he just lost the American colonies. Like, this is 1787. We haven't quite finished our Constitution yet, but we know we won. We're that close to the end of the Revolutionary War. And among other things, King George III is fucking broke. Oh my God. All that money he spent to get them colonies gone. He's going to have to spend more to trade their fuck. The French are going to have a better port than him. God damn it. And so he turns to his people, right? And he's like, listen, here's what we need to do. I need some of the colonies we do have to start paying off. Okay? What are we doing this for if these colonies don't just start sending checks pretty soon? So we need to make money, tighten our belts. And the botanists sit down with the mathematicians and go, the answer is breadfruit, Your Majesty. That's it. We found it in Tahiti. When Captain Cook was over there, he found this amazing plant. We wrote about it. There's pictures of it. We've seen a few of them. And here's the deal. They're nutritious. They're hardy. It's kind of hard to tighten your belt on your labor force when they are entirely enslaved, right? The only thing you can really do is try to find a cheaper way to feed and house them or increase productivity. And so it was seriously like, this is it. We think if we get this plant, we'll repot it there in the Caribbean. It will do really well. It tastes good. It's kind of like a combination of like bread and potatoes. It's hardy. The leaves and the wood are very useful. You can build things out of that.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. Everybody's going to love this, right? So the bounty this is the order. You, Captain Bligh, we're going to give you this ship called Bounty. And this is a moment to just let you know why I'm going to stumble on this for the rest of this episode. Technically, it is not the Bounty.
Right.
The Bounty is incorrect. It is technically Her Majesty's armed vessel, Bounty. Just Bounty, no the. However, how can we be blamed? Every movie is Mutiny on the Bounty. The only movie that isn't called Mutiny on the Bounty is just called The Bounty. So for anyone who may be like more nautically minded than me, who like itches every time I say it, fuck off. That's how it is. It's 91 feet long. It's built for a crew of 13. You, however, good buddy, are going to get a crew of 45, and you're going to scrunch them. You're going to squeeze them all together in this little fucking ship. And so there's room for the breadfruit, you understand? Yeah. And we need you to get there, by the way, quick and cheap. So that means going the fastest way possible, and that means you're going to go via Cape Horn.
Problematic.
problematic. I don't know. If you spin the globe around once, you go, no, that's a terrible idea. Cape Horn is the southern tip of South America. It is cold as fuck. It is violent winds. There is exactly like a week's long window of time that any fucking ship, and this is still today, has a reasonable chance of getting around Cape Horn without just being smashed to bits. And the Admiralty says to William Bligh, yes, that's the way we'd like you to go. And then they delay them so long that there's no way they arrive in that perfect window of time. So for the first weeks, it's just they get their asses slapped by the ocean trying to get around Cape Horn. And just cramped and cold and fucking off. And William Bligh, when faced with adversity, does basically one thing. He has like one reaction, which is just get pissed off. Just get mean. Yell louder. Hit harder. Take things away from them. Make it personal. Beat the fuck out of people for good reason. No reason.
Who cares?
Who cares? Yeah. And eventually they're like, we can't get around Cape Horn. Time's running out. We got to go the long way. The way we've gone before. The way people go. Which means this wasted time. And they literally whip a shitty over there and head the other way towards the Cape of Good Hope, which is at the southern tip of Africa, of course. Bing, bang, boom. We know this route. Okay. And Captain Bligh just becomes more of a dick every day. He continues this route of just like, fuck you, your mom's a slut. Go sit up there until your ass hurts. You don't get any more food. Just uniformly hated.
Yeah, not a popular guy.
And then they get to what I call ta-da, Tahiti. Yeah. Now, have you been to Tahiti?
I have not. I've been to Fiji, which I imagine is not dissimilar in some ways, but not Tahiti.
Probably anyone who arrived in Tahiti, for the most part, goes, oh my God, it's so gorgeous. Holy shit, right? But for these guys, these sad sacks, my word, they were like, fuck, yes, Tahiti, yes. It is warm. It is not moving.
And even before the boat, they were living in England in sort of the late 18th century. So an island paradise by comparison to that.
Exactly. Flying to Tahiti first class from London, you're still like, oh, thank God, got me out of London. We are about to like really kind of beat the shit out of William Bligh for good reason. He really sucks. But one optimist to another, I thought we would start pointing out some of his more positive attributes. Okay. And so a little quiz question for you, Scott. William Bligh is credited for being ahead of his time in terms of seeing to the necessity of diet and exercise, to the long-term success of a naval voyage. Okay. What was a daily habit that he demanded from everyone aboard? And you've got multiple choice, okay?
Oh, okay. I can answer that with multiple choice, but go for it.
Oh, that's so impressive. Do you want to knock my socks off and do it without the multiple choice?
Sure.
Or should we give the listeners a chance
to see?
Give
the listeners a chance. And then maybe...
Let's give them a chance. Okay, because they're like,
wrong.
what the fuck? Okay, good. No, I'll turn this.
I know this. Yeah. No problem.
You're like, you fucked that up. Okay, was it A, that every man climb to the top of the tallest mast, hand over hand, ring a bell, and then slide back down gloveless? Mm-hmm. Was it B, that the whole crew gather after sunrise for a mandatory group dance led by a blind fiddler? Mm-hmm. Or C, that each man tie a line to his waist, dive into the ocean, and tread water for a quarter hour, regardless of weather?
I'm going to go with the blind fiddler.
It is the blind. I imagine that's kind of a hard one to forget. I kept track of the blind fiddler throughout this story. I think you'll be delighted to find out how he ends up at the end of all this. So yeah, we got to give Bligh credit. His knowledge, he knew everyone needed some oranges once in a while. And in that sense, you know, for a guy who has been sort of historically panned, it's like, good job with nobody died of scurvy. Isn't that great?
That's good.
Yeah. Congratulations. That's good. the question, though, does come at this part of the real history, right? If he didn't, as he's shown in that movie, whip a guy's back to the point of like near death, although there were floggings, it wasn't like nobody was beaten up, but that if the violence wasn't actually that bad, then it does ask why the mutiny, because our story up to this point is incredibly good for context, but is not historically remarkable.
No.
Right? A pointless voyage, a crew being sent out by the Admiralty for some stupid fucking thing that they're probably not going to be able to accomplish, and have a captain that's sort of a cunt. This is, boy, howdy, dime a dozen those stories. So the question does come at this point, then why? Then why was there a mutiny, and why was this mutiny remembered? And it really comes down, I think, to two big factors. One is that it wasn't just that William Bligh was an asshole, a violent, brutal asshole. It was that he was inconsistent. I mean it. Because there was a level of violent brutality that wasn't just expected, but was necessary. And it wasn't just the officers that said, well, you see, we have to beat them, sir. They don't listen. It was also sailors knowing that, like, if this individual is going to beat the fuck out of the guy who guards our food. I like that because I do believe they'll eat all of our food if they don't, so the guy stole food or he let some of our food rot.
Yeah.
The captain beat the fuck out of him. I kind of like that. I kind of need that because it's so important to us, right?
Makes me feel safe.
Yes, exactly. He beat some people way too much for small things. He let some people go for stuff that really, the book says you beat the fuck out of them, and he didn't even beat the fuck out of them when the book said you could, And he personal attacks, referenced the coconut incident, just like weird petty shit making people feel bad. So that was they just didn't like the guy. Yeah.
So for context, I mean, you said earlier, he said to Christian, "Damn your eyes, Christian." I mean, that is, for those days, terrible, disgusting swearing. Damn was a shocking word to say. And so he was effectively using really foul language at these guys. It sounds nothing to us today, but the things he was saying to them was actually quite offensive, particularly to Christian.
I think that's a really good point. And also to sailors, where they're very superstitious, very religious. They know that their fates aboard these vessels is sort of in the hands of a lot of intangible elements, right? And generally the sailor population would be really sensitive to, are you calling dams down on us? Don't damn. Nobody here needs to be damned, girl. It doesn't really hit just one of us on a boat, This kind of messing with God. The other significant element for the mutiny brewing on this particular crew at this particular time is how long they spend in Tahiti when they get there. They're there for 23 weeks, man. And of course, they are getting tattoos. They're having sex. They're fucking the women. They're making good friends. They're digging on the culture. That happens for every sailor in every port throughout history. But 23 weeks in one spot, doing nothing but hanging out and filling your time. Oh, that's several things happen. One, you don't want to leave. The contrast between what life was like on the ship and what life is like on shore is so painfully drastic, right?
Oh, yeah.
I was really surprised to learn that very few of the crew actually went ashore. Fletcher Christian did. He led most of the time on board. He lived on shore a lot of the time. He was tattooed. He was getting into the Tahitian culture.
He definitely went native.
Yeah. But then the guys on the boat were even more like, fuck. They're just smelling the mangoes on your breath when you come back to the thing. They're like, oh my God. It must have been such a... And this is, of course, where tattoo was invented. Why sailors are attributed as the ones to have these early tattoos, because it was these first guys in the Tahitian Islands. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is the other thing, though, I think is sometimes overlooked for why William Bligh was such a bad captain, and why you can just sort of say definitively he was a bad captain in addition to being disliked and too brutal, but then also inconsistent in his brutality, is that these 23 weeks that they're in Tahiti, he fucks up a lot of important captain shit. He seems incredibly devoted to like his diary, which he wants to publish for profit, which is just like illustrations from Tahiti and flowers, sort of his travel journal, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't maintain discipline. He does. This is one of those instances where he's inconsistent. He like makes a lot of the guys stay on the ship and whatever, but like he doesn't stop them from getting tattoos. He has no restriction on their sexual relationships with the women. He's not making them maintain the sails, make sure that the small roundabout boats are maintained well. He's fucking up, right? So when he does 23 weeks later be like, all right, everybody, let's bring these gorgeous, tanned, tattooed asses of yours back into the hellhole for our long, cold journey back to drabby old England. Everybody, come on.
Yeah. Leave your hot girlfriends behind and let's go.
That's right. Remember those beautiful breasts, because you're never going to see them again. and there had been a couple of desertions. There had been, as I think history would not have noted them, because that happens. They stole a boat, they went into the woods, and we never saw them again. But for the most part, Fletcher Christian and the rest of them put the flowers on the lady and like, fuck, this sucks. And they get back on Bounty and they head out. And Bligh seems to notice immediately that everyone's just not quite doing the thing, and probably recognizing
They're not feeling it.
feeling it, right? And he does the one thing, his one trick, which is I can beat this out of them. I can abuse them sufficiently into duty. And it's so bad. His treatment.
That'll make them happy.
They'll love this. Yes. And he's restricting their diets. He's forcing them to clean stuff that's already clean. Just the demeaning, painful humiliations. And they're coming day after day. And Fletcher Christian is visibly not handling it well. He's starting to tell people, boy, I feel like I'm in hell, man. He uses that phrase a lot. I'm in hell. I hate this. To your point about him being a gentleman, it isn't just a personal thing. You are disrespecting me fundamentally, man. You are, and let's not forget that Tahitian ass I just had for like 6 months was so good. And I ate the fruit every day, but he's also at the end of his rope. And this is a tough choice because it's all on the line. If he abandons ship, if he steals a boat and just decides to run away and not do this trip back to London, he will lose his job, he will lose his station, lose his fortune, everything. His whole life is gone. But he's also kind of feeling like that same thing will happen if he defies the captain. If he actually stands up and is like, fuck you, man, and tries to like properly revolt and like, I'm taking away, And he has a couple sleepless nights and he talks to a couple of his buddies. And, when you talk about light bulb, I don't know if this is a light bulb moment, but it's one of those moments where we go, we don't know why or exactly when Fletcher Christian went, wait, why should I fucking leave? Why should I abandon ship? Why should I? And he turns on an evening his plan into action, which is I'm going to put William Bligh on one of these little fucking boats and I'm going to send him off. Bounty is mine, right? He talks to a couple of his sympathetic officers and they're like, yeah, man. He sucks.
Let's do this.
We're in. And so there's a guy. Now everybody's got guns, right? And there's the guy, the gunner and the gunner's mate. And his whole job is keep an eye on the fucking guns. Don't let anybody get the guns unless we need them. And if the captain says we need guns, get the guns to everybody. And he's asleep on the gun case. And so Fletcher Christian and his buddy goes and wakes him up at 4:30 in the morning and says, hey, buddy, hi, we need a gun to shoot a shark. And the guy goes, okie dokie, second in command, Fletcher, here you go. And he goes back to sleep and he lays down, he goes back to sleep. They use this gun then to coerce some of the less enthusiastic officers. And ultimately, at about 5 o'clock in the morning, Christian kicks Bligh's ass out of bed for a change. Keep in mind that coconut incident had just happened like the day before, and he's got a cutlass and a gun, and he's like, wake up, slut. This here is a mutiny. Okay. And William Bligh is stark naked. All of the official testimonies of what happens is his hog is out. He's white as shit. Because everybody, all the other sailors have been getting tattoos in sunshine for 6 months, and he's been writing in his diary under an umbrella. So he's very pasty. And it's bad enough that some of the officers in their court testimony were like, oh, Lord, I tried to cover the captain and Fletcher wouldn't let me. And it's like, oh, I love that moment. Just being like, let his dick out. This guy sucks. And William Bligh says to Fletcher Christian, why are you doing this?
What have I done to offend you?
Exactly. He's like, you dunce. You called my mama a whore. You've been beating me up. You said you took my coconut. You got mad about the coconut. What do you mean? Why? And he does, though. William Bligh seems seriously perplexed, too perplexed throughout a lot of this story. He puts him in a little boat. First little boat that Fletcher Christian puts him into is leaking and rotten, which, to be fair, is William Bligh's fucking fault. But they get him out, and they're like, sorry, we're not going to put you in a sinking boat. We're not going to do that. The second boat they get is too small to hold all of the other people that, after looking at things and having a think on it, were like, I'm going to go with William Bligh. He sucks, and this looks really dangerous, but I will definitely be executed and murdered by the crown, and my whole family will be poor and I'm just going to play my cards this way. And it's so many that they have to get a third boat to accommodate them all, and it still doesn't hold all the people who want to go with William Bligh. Ultimately, after what must have been, they finally, he got to put his dick somewhere finally, which I thought was generous. And they do some negotiation. They give him some food and some fresh water. Bligh he doesn't have any charts. He doesn't have a lot of stuff, but he gets a few. They throw him a few bones. They're negotiating, but a lot of fun insults. Everybody's account says that after hurling insults and jeering for hours, and I'm like, oh, to be a fly on the wall to hear what we were saying back and forth, that ultimately Fletcher Christian and the mutineers push William Bligh and his 18 buddies out into the open ocean. And the last thing that they see is the mutineers dancing and celebrating.
Was the blind fiddler there? I think he was, wasn't he?
He was! Yes! The blind fiddler got to stay. I'm sure there was probably fiddle music. So we have gotten to the point, I told you we would get aboard the Bounty. We would get to this point, and that you are now in command. And when we come back from our break, we'll find out what direction you're steering us.
Fantastic.
This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Hey listeners, since you're a fan of this podcast, you clearly enjoy learning fascinating history facts, which is why we think you'll love our show.
It's called Midnight Facts for Insomniacs and features weekly deep dives into a variety of topics. It also features us, comedians and lifelong friends Shane Rogers and Duncan McEwen.
So whether you're nocturnal, sleep-deprived, or just a fan of laughing and learning, we'll keep you entertained with more than 130 episodes covering everything from astrology to pirates to the history of personality tests.
Just search for Midnight Facts in any podcast player to join the Midnight Masses.
All right, shipmates, hails bells. Now, before we climb back aboard with our mutineers, a tip of the hat to my loyal crew, my patrons. Oh, now, they're naughty, but I only flog them when they ask nicely. Indeed, my crew spend their idle hours soaking up hot HILF bonus content and got this episode a whole day early. Yeah, don't be jealous, baby. Just jump in bed with us and get yours. There is a Patreon link in our show notes, or you can find us on patreon.com/HILF podcast. If you can't fill the coffers, but you still want to fill my sails, drop us a rating, a review, subscribe if you don't already, and then go to HILF Podcast on Instagram and
Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow.
I understand you're a teacher too, right?
Yeah.
What do you teach?
I teach what you would call middle school.
So
teach
you're
at
dealing
that.
with those adolescents. Oh no, those early adolescents.
Early adolescents. Well, see, I in Australia I teach primary school, which is effectively kindergarten to year 6, but I tend to do 5 and 6, which it falls into middle school for you guys. But the early middle school, and I have to teach everything. So I teach history, math, English, everything.
Yeah.
So that's my job.
It sounds kind of great. I always wanted to be a teacher.
Basically, I spend my day doing stand-up comedy for 11-year-olds.
Is it a rough room? It's a rough room.
Oh no, well they love this thing. Is okay, in year 5 they love you, and you can do no wrong. In year 6 you're an asshole.
Great.
They hate
You know, this is good. I'm going to write this down because I have a feeling that it's the same at that age for every adult in your life. It's like you don't know shit about fuck. And you're like, God damn. In fact, I have my daughter and I discuss history quite a bit because she's very curious. I'm still a superhero. I'm still in that place where everything I say is right and I have a lot of power. I know it's going. I know it's going quickly. But she asked me what I'm doing all day. And I'm always doing the same thing all day, which is thinking about, writing about, reading about, talking about something cool from history. God bless my life. I'm so lucky.
Yeah.
I'm either making jokes about it or I'm, something. And so, and she's always curious about the book I have. And so it's a really good challenge for me to, the first filter of every episode is me trying to explain to a 5-year-old what it is.
Yeah.
And, it's fun. And she like, and it's funny how much sticks because the other day I was talking about Donald Trump and that he's a bad king.
Yes.
And she goes like Henry VIII.
Yeah, pretty much.
I was like, whoa. We are officially back. I have poured myself. The ice cube is deceiving you how big it, but it's a hefty pour.
Okay.
And I went ahead and went with whiskey because it's my favorite. What'd you get?
Well, I see. It's because it's what's now 9 a.m. for me. I'm still in coffee mode, but I put a liberal amount of peanut butter whiskey in there. So.
Cheers.
That's
See, I know.
quite nice.
Can we appreciate too, to your point of increasing human knowledge and how well we've developed that many of the events we're talking about happened, between the east coast of Australia and the Tahitian, Polynesian islands, right, and the north of Australia, close to you geographically, and so much of this history was the difficulty for a human being to communicate from and travel to these places.
The tyranny of distance.
Ooh, that curled my toes. Careful now. I got to keep my clothes on for a little bit longer. That we now are sipping, whiskey that probably traveled across the same oceans just to get into our glasses. To humans. We're doing great.
Cheers.
Cheers.
We're doing great. We could do a whole lot better, but hey, baby steps.
And here we are, Captain. I have always preferred the drivers of my vessels to have a cocktail. So I feel like you are now suitably lubricated to steer us. My friend, your choice. You can either steer us in the direction of William Bligh sitting in that open air boat with 18 other soggy cunts going who knows where, or we can stay aboard the Bounty with these mutineers, and we can find out where these guys go. What do you want to do?
I think we might go with Bligh because he's a pretty funny character. I've got a feeling that Fletcher's having an existential crisis, whereas Bligh, I think, is just he's such a cartoon character. It's going to be funny to follow.
I agree. It's been fun to sort of cast William Bligh in my mind because the movies and some of his behavior has made him older to me. He's already sort of a grumpy white-haired old man, but he was only 33 when this whole thing took place. And I'm 45 and I am a baby, so I can only imagine, how good looking everybody must have been. Let's get on board Captain Bligh. So we've just been pushed out, okay? And let's be fair. Even the 18 dudes who climb into the boat with William Bligh are not uniformly big fans of his.
No.
Okay? Some of them are bound by duty to go with him because they are simply not a part of this mutiny and simply cannot be part of this mutiny, however sympathetic they may be.
I mean, mutini's a very big deal.
Yeah, we're execution. Your family can, and forget your career, anything that you've worked for. There's no but your majesty, he was a real piece of shit.
We don't care.
Especially for a king that is feeling the bruises of what if we just didn't listen to the captain kind of attitude, right? This independence, this democracy, this not following, it's got to be crunched out. Or what the fuck are we doing, right?
I mean, Britain rules the waves because of the military or the naval discipline. So if they let one little bit of discipline slide, they're screwed. They have to maintain it for everyone all the time.
And this is a really good time to make this point, Scott, because significantly, this is a ship run by the Navy, technically. It's Her Majesty's, right? But this is not a military ship. These guys, very uniquely, all volunteered to go aboard Bounty. No one was pressed into service on Bounty, which is crazy. And one of the reasons why Fletcher Christian was excited to serve with William Bligh is because he had before, and they were buddies. The significant difference between the previous voyage that Fletcher Christian had with William Bligh was that it was a merchant ship. And you just can't treat guys you're paying, whose job this is, the same as you can treat an enlisted man in the Navy. And so there was a real portion of this was the ground shift for Fletcher Christian serving under a captain in the Navy versus the merchant, The boat didn't even hold everyone who wanted to go. There were quite a few people left on Bounty that were like, oh, fuck, my wife is gonna, oh my God, and wanted to, but there just wasn't room, right? Or because Fletcher Christian said, you have to stay, we need your particular skill set with us, right?
Yeah, the guy who was like the tool maker or whatever.
Yeah, we need you, right? Or you can go, but we need you to leave your tools, which was, a bargain that some of them made. In any event, none of them are happy about this. They're very cramped. They have some food. They have some water. They have a little rum, a little wine, thank God, some coconuts, hilarious. I'm sure in the jeering and whatever colorful dialogue they had going back and forth, I'm sure the enjoy your fucking coconuts was probably in there. And breadfruit, hilarious. They also got some breadfruit. There is not enough room for anyone to lie down ever. The food that they have notably does not include a head of broccoli, girl, or right? So there are bowel pain. Everyone's constipated and in pain. They are sitting. They can't stretch their legs. They're already like, oh my God. And there's 4 inches between the water line and the top of that boat.
Sounds great.
So we are not going to be out here for long. Thanks, Billy. This is awesome. So their first stop and the last place that the mutineers see them go is toward an island. If you can pronounce, by the way, if I make a notable pronunciation error and you know better, please correct me.
I doubt it, but
Tofua.
Sounds good. Yep.
The island of Tofua. Okay, it's a constantly erupting volcano, and it's erupting at the time. And so there they go.
It's a bit of a metaphor for Bligh.
Exactly. So William Bligh, by the way, gets to Tofua, And it is a hard pass from the inhabitants of Tofua, who are hard as fuck, okay? They live on a constantly erupting volcano. They are, from the get-go, throwing rocks and full attack mode, to the point where we lose our first guy. A guy named Norton gets hit by a rock. He's the quartermaster. He is dead. And Bligh and the guys are like, fuck, fuck, fuck. And they start throwing clothes and stuff, anything that will slow them down. The pursuing indigenous people are slowing down to pick up the shit that they throw off. And they manage, with this 18 just slow in the water, moving slow as fuck, with these fast-moving canoes, just throwing their clothes. That was day one.
Sounds like a scene out of Pirates of the Caribbean.
It does. It's ridiculous. So now they're sitting there. What the fuck are we going to do, man? We are in the middle of nowhere. We have enough food for like a week, maybe. All of these islands, none of these islands are, who knows? We can't go towards the islands. What are we going to do? And so William Bligh, Captain Bligh, says, here's what we're going to do. You know the boat that we almost died in going 100 yards, whatever it was? We're going to take this thing 7,000 kilometers. That's 4,000 miles across the open ocean with no charts and no tools. And we're going to get eventually to Timor.
Yep.
That there's a the Dutch East India Company has something there. And so essentially looking at the wide open ocean, he goes, we're basically going to go that way, and then we're going to hang a little that way, and we'll hit it.
I mean, one thing you got to say about Bligh is he learned how to navigate from Cook, who was like the master. So he may have been a total cock, but he was really good at navigating.
I would say he is as good a navigator and a pilot of a ship as you could get, and he would have to be, because it did sort of make up for what a dick he was. I mean, because a spoiler alert too, William Bligh gets mutinied in his career like 9 times. So this is not like a one of, like, he's just objectively, he's a problematic dude that people do not like. And not only did he manage to do this, but he does it with a reluctant crew, right? Not that they have a ton of choice, but here we go.
They want to leave.
But he says, I've got a timekeeper. I've basically got a compass, a quadrant, some tables for determining latitude and longitude, and a timekeeper. And with those instruments, I'm pretty confident that I can get us to Timor. And they all pledge, all right, they look at the provisions and they go, okay, we're all going to agree that we're going to take 1 ounce of bread a day. That's 25 grams. And a 1/4 pint of fresh water. That's less than 150 milliliters. They pledge their solemn oath. No one's going to eat more than that. And they fucking go. They have a few sails. It's 41 days total that they are out there in the open ocean. 20 of those days it rains.
Jesus.
And they just fucking huddle and no one can stretch their legs, and everyone's got to poop.
Yeah.
And oh my God, they finally see Australia. You've heard of the place.
I've heard of the place, yeah. It's vaguely familiar.
It's very big. And it's, this is after 3 weeks at sea. It's May of 1789. They managed to navigate the Great Barrier Reef. Yay. Food, supplies.
Yep.
Okay, but as they also get to shore, people get to stretch their legs for a hot minute and maybe enjoy a fresh coconut for the first time in a long time. It leaves just enough room for grievance. They've gotten just far enough away from survival mode to go, I hate your fucking guts, man. And it primarily, some of them are like, we don't want to listen to William Bligh. First of all, okay, we got here, great. He shouldn't be our captain anymore. Whatever this is and wherever we're going, he sucks. We would rather follow this guy Fryer. And Fryer's kind of like, well, I mean, if they want me to be captain,
I wouldn't say no.
I wouldn't say no. And this guy Purcell is particularly like, yes, Bligh sucks. And when we get back to London, we are going to tell them that the mutineers were right. And I mean, it's already very like, crazy and contentious. But also, what are you gonna do, man? He's still technically the captain. No one's really willing to like overthrow him or have an actual mutiny. Also, William Bligh fucking points a bayonet and puts a couple of them in irons and is like, for real? You want this? And they were like, I'm sorry, we're not home yet. Let's work this out later. So there's also stealing. It's nuts. Finally, they get like, come on, guys. And they get into this open air boat again. And they essentially follow now the Australian coast up north around the little hoo-ha. And bang, bang, boom, they get to Timor. And everyone's a little sicker and a little hotter and a little, they're declining. They're losing fucking nutrients. They land, they're sick, and they have to wait. This is it's an island. It's an Indonesian island, for those of you who are less familiar with the geography, between Northwest Australia and like the rest of the Indonesian islands. It was colonized by the Dutch. It's friendly-esque.
Yeah, a little bit.
But we're still not running on shore. We still remember the scary, scary volcano island.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that again.
The other thing is that they're white people on the other side of the earth, so they're going to band together even though they hate each other.
Yeah.
The British and the Dutch. We're still white people.
Right, exactly.
At least we're not natives.
Exactly, right. Could be worse. So they finally find out, though, that they're Dutch money. And William Bligh, you think about all the stuff that he was like, I have to have my absolute essentials on board, does manage to get aboard some Dutch money. And it comes in awfully handy because the indigenous people and the Dutch folks who are still overseeing things there know exactly how to spend that money. And they are kind of towed, essentially, in their open-air boat to the city of Kupang. And they wait there to get permission to come aboard. And then they do. And this character, man, if I was making the movie version of this, he is a mercenary sailor commander named Captain Bickerman. And he's like speaking English, and he makes them a big English breakfast, and he brings out all this tea, and he's like, oh my God, this sounds dreadful what you've been through.
You wouldn't know Spickerman.
and they all finally lay in this house and convalesce. The ones who are going to get the island malaria fever get it. A few of them die. Fucking William Bligh at this point too is like, oh boy, I could arguably come out looking pretty bad in this whole thing.
Well, he had lost his ship, which is a pretty big deal.
Right. And so he gets busy writing his account of what happened, how this was a well-laid plan, planned in advance by all of his officers conspiring together, because of course only such a plan could have worked. Certainly he didn't come dick first out of the dark with no clue.
What, that didn't make it into his account?
Who was mad or why? He's like, I was naked and didn't even know they were mad. I gotta be honest with you. I didn't see it coming at all. And the only way for that to happen is for them to be impeccable mutineers, right?
Diabolical.
But Bligh also gets sick. He does get just enough of the fever and the sickness that he and his two servants, which, stick a pin in that, what? Who have had to get in that little boat with him and are now like, Jesus, this fucking guy. And he and these two guys get onto a special ship, just them, to kind of hightail it to London because he's pretty sick. And he says, Friar, you're in charge, even though Friar hates his guts. He's like, Friar, you're in charge. Everybody get home however you can. Good luck out there.
Yeah. I need to get home first to get my story out there.
Exactly. They leave Timor, they get to Batavia, and that's like the best place to go to, like, your next stop is London. It's again kind of a halt. Finally, March 14th, 1790, they get back into England. Girl, this is 11 months since the mutiny. It's been about 3-ish years since they left. Of the 19 men that Fletcher Christian put in that boat with William Bligh, 12 of them make it back to London almost a full year later.
Like
And do they have a story to tell? When we come back for part 2 of the Mutiny on the Bounty, we have 2 more adventure tales to tell. The mutineers, man.
Yep.
What the fuck happened aboard that boat after that blind fiddler put the fiddle down and everybody looked around and were like, now what do we do? Oh, before we say goodbye on this chapter, do you have any questions or anything that you thought was just a particularly delicious nugget that I overlooked?
Oh, look, I think the fact that voyage of that tiny boat is one of the great sort of individual voyages. Like the rates up there with Shackleton, with that kind of, as much as, like I said, as much as Bligh is a total dick, that is one of the most amazing voyages of all time. So
Yes.
Forget the fact that the Mutiny on the Bounty itself is sort of newsworthy and sexy and fuckable.
Yeah.
This whole trip is actually quite amazing. What he managed to do there. So it shouldn't go without note that's like, if in and of itself is an amazing achievement.
Totally agree with you. And would make him super fuckable on its own. Like I'd go out with him a few times. But just on that resume alone, even if everyone's like, the only reason he got into the boat that makes this incredible voyage is because he is an unlikable prick. Yes. And the only reason people don't talk about this incredible voyage first and foremost when they talk about him is because he is an unlikable prick. I'd be like, great, let's go. I'd still have an espresso with him. I want to know how you do it, man. Because also these guys, like, I mean, there's been other moments where I've tried to put myself really in the position of a figure that I'm studying. And one was like the lifeboats after the Titanic sank. Yeah. In the moments specifically right after the boat has disappeared. And it goes from the crazy chaos to the eerie. Like, that one has always been a thing. The other is like the Donner Party, when the snow comes that you just know you are not leaving and you know how much food you have. Just that, like, well, let's play some cards. And this is another one, you know, being in this boat and just everybody's knees are touching for the next 8 months.
And you're relying on this total dick to save you.
Oh, my God. It's sort of a metaphor for American politics at the moment. Scott's the best, right? I know, good news. He'll be back for part 2 in 2 short weeks, whence we will rejoin our mutineers aboard Bounty to find out where they go next and what happens when those who have just disobeyed command now take it. Now, if waiting 2 weeks between HILFs makes you nuts, how about this? Follow the link in our show notes to Scott's book series, Lightbulb Moments in Human History, and listen to the audiobook. It's not him reading, it's another Australian guy, but you'll love it. Also, remember, my patrons get the new episodes a full day early and a bonus episode in the Wednesdays in between. Want in? Go to patreon.com/HILFpodcast. Until next time, our theme song was composed and performed by Kat Perkins. A reminder that you can find my sources, links to the books, documentaries, and articles I reference in the summary of this episode or by emailing us, hilfpodcast@gmail.com, or messaging us on social media @HILFpodcast. This has been HILF. History I'd Like to Fuck with Dawn Brody. I'm Dawn Brody, reminding you that history is a party, and everybody's coming.